Good morning, Agustinians. Welcome to USA Team Dugong Bughaw's Alternative Class.
I am Profe Kaduduan.
And I am Rainer Kawa, serving as your hosts for today's Alternative Class.
How are you feeling today, students? Have you enjoyed the activities so far in this year's University Week? Well, today, we'll be dwelling into the science of HIV and AIDS, as well as the stigma and discrimination surrounding the people affected by this virus.
To start with, we would like to give time for Ma'am Miriam Nika Grace Nunez, one of the advisors of Team Dugong Bughaw, to give her opening remarks.
To our dear participants, guests, fellow Agustinians, good morning. It is a great pleasure to be with you today to open the University of San Agustin Team Dugong Bughaw's alternative class for this year's University Week celebration. This focuses on Project High Five, HIV mechanism, stigma, and discrimination. Up to date, there are still misconceptions about how HIV is transmitted and what it means to live with HIV. The lack of information and awareness, plus the outdated beliefs, cause people to develop fear to the term HIV itself. People living with HIV usually develop a negative self-image upon continuous internalization of the stigma they experience. This can lead to feelings of shame, fear of disclosure, and isolation. And that is the problem. Living up to its mission, which is to unite the Augustinian community for HIV and AIDS awareness and to improve the knowledge, attitude, and practice of Augustinian students regarding the transmission and prevention of the virus, the USA Team Dugong Bughaw strives to continue giving information and sharing knowledge about HIV and censuring segregation and discrimination. I do hope this talk will make a significant impact to each of us and create an opportunity for all of us to be part of the development that advances stigma-free outlook on HIV and AIDS. Let us work together in solidarity and build a healthier and safer world for all of us. Thank you, and once again, good morning.
Alright, now we will move on to our next part, which is to educate ourselves through wonderful thoughts and ideas of our speaker.
Our speaker is a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Public Health of the University of the Philippines, Visayas. Aside from being a registered medical technologist, she is currently taking up medicine in the University of the Philippines, Manila. She is also a peer educator of Team Dugong Bughaw. To share with us her knowledge about HIV, how it is transmitted, and the means of prevention, stigma, and discrimination of today's topic, let us welcome Ms. Karra Casañares.
Hello everyone, my name is Karra and I'm a peer educator of Team Dugong Bughaw. So today, I'm going to talk about HIV and AIDS. But first and foremost, I would like to ask you a question. Is HIV equal to AIDS? Well, they're not. HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. H for human, meaning it can only be passed from human to human. While I stands for immunodeficiency. Immunodeficiency attacks the immune system and weakens the body's defenses against disease or infection. While V stands for virus. It's an organism that reproduces itself by taking over the human cell. Meanwhile, AIDS stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. A stands for acquired, meaning it can be transmitted from person to person through opportunistic infections. Meanwhile, IV stands for immunodeficiency. Immunodeficiency affects and makes the immune system not work properly. Well, lastly, S stands for syndrome. Syndrome is a wide range of different diseases and opportunistic infections. It is a collection of signs and symptoms of a disease. Now, so what? Why do we talk about HIV and AIDS? Why do I have to learn about this? Why do you have to know about this? Well, 36.7 million people are currently living with HIV and AIDS worldwide. Only 60% of them know about their HIV status, while for 40% of them, or over 14 million, still need access to HIV testing services. Now, just imagine 14 million people not knowing that about their HIV status. That's a lot of people. That's more than one-tenth of the population of the Philippines. Now, in the Philippines, in 2008, we only had one case per day, but then it became 4 cases per day in 2010, 9 cases per day in 2012. In 2014, we had 17 cases already, almost twice in the 2 year span. And in 2016, we had 22 cases per day. In 2017, we had 27 cases per day, and it grew to 31 cases per day in 2018, and in 2019, we already had 42 cases per day. So it's already 2021. So can you imagine the number of cases we are already at? So in Region 6, the highest number of cases of HIV is in Iloilo City, followed by the Iloilo Province. We have 462. Now, as of February 2019, every 8 hours, a person is diagnosed with HIV in Western Visayas. So if we have 24 hours a day, every 8 hours, that means 3 people are being diagnosed with HIV in Western Visayas. Now, how do you actually get HIV? So we're going to play a game called the transmission game. So, can blood transmit HIV? Well, of course. Blood is one of the modes of transmission of HIV. Now, how about hugging? So hugging cannot or will not transmit HIV. Saliva. So it will not transmit HIV. So you would need to actually have about 2 liters of infected saliva for HIV to be transmitted, which is a lot, and that's not actually possible. Next, mosquito bites. Mosquito bites or mosquitoes do not carry HIV. How about sharing of used needles? Well, sharing of used needles is also one of the modes of transmission of HIV. How about sweat or sweating? Sweat will not transmit HIV. How about coughing? It will not transmit HIV, but it will transmit COVID-19. So we should never forget to wear our face masks properly whenever we go out. Next is the use of the common CR or public restroom. So it will not transmit HIV. How about breastfeeding or intake of infected breast milk? It can and it will transmit HIV. How about the handshake? Handshaking will not transmit HIV. Pregnancy, of course, transmits HIV through mother and child transmission. How about tears? Well, tears, fortunately, will not transmit HIV. How about swimming in a pool with a PLHIV? Now, a PLHIV stands for person living with HIV. This is the politically correct term for people living with HIV. So we don't call them HIV victims or HIV positives. We call them PLHIV, which stands for people or person living with HIV. So swimming in a pool with a PLHIV does not transmit HIV. Now, unprotected sexual intercourse. Of course, it will transmit HIV. Okay, so to recap, based on our game, there are 3 modes of transmission of HIV. So first is unprotected sex. So HIV can be transmitted through vaginal sex, oral sex, and anal sex. So any form of unprotected sex will transmit HIV. Okay? So it can be transmitted during unprotected sexual intercourse through the contact with infected blood, semen, cervical or vaginal fluids of the infected person. So no matter what kind of intercourse that would be, as long as you have contact with infected blood, semen, or other fluids of the infected person, HIV can be transmitted. Now, the presence of other sexually transmitted infections or STIs also increases the chances of contracting or transmitting HIV through the tears and the injuries or the wounds caused by these STIs. Which brings us to the next mode of transmission, blood transmission. Now, HIV-infected blood gaining entrance to the body through a first transfusion, which is why we always screen our blood before being transfused to another person to make sure that the blood is free of other diseases, not only HIV. Next, it can gain entrance to the body through an organ transplant. Organ transplants also have a blood transmission, meaning it includes blood. That's why it needs to be screened before getting an organ transplant. Also, HIV-infected blood gains entrance to the body through needle pricks, which is why we should always always make sure that when we go to tattoo artists or we have our ears pierced or our bodies pierced, that we need to make sure that the needles we use are disinfected, and we should also avoid needle sharing. Also, it can be transmitted, as I have said earlier, through contaminated needles, syringes, razors, or other sharp objects. Because once blood is infected and it will transfer to another human body carrying HIV, that person is at high risk of contracting HIV. Next, it can be transmitted through infected blood entering the body through open wounds. Like I have said earlier, chances of contracting the HIV is increased with the presence of sexually transmitted infections because we have open wounds that could transmit, that could get in contact with infected blood. Next, mother to child transmission. Like I have said earlier, pregnancy can transmit HIV. Now, mothers can pass HIV to their babies during pregnancy, of course, because there is maternal and fetal circulation involved, the blood is involved. During delivery, when babies accidentally swallow any fluids the mother has, the blood, the cervical fluids, or vaginal fluids, and or after birth through breastfeeding. As I have said during our game, breast milk contains HIV, which can be passed on from mother to babies. Okay, so I have mentioned earlier that we have four body fluids. We have the blood, the semen, the vaginal fluids, and the breast milk. So if we have three modes of transmission, unprotected sex, blood transmission, and mother to child, we also have four body fluids. Four body fluids to remember: blood, semen, vaginal fluids, and breast milk. Okay, so is there a cure for HIV and AIDS? So there is no known cure yet for HIV and AIDS. However, we have treatment for them. So treatments involved taking of antiretroviral drugs. You have to take them, a PLHIV has to take them religiously so that it will lower the viral count of HIV in the body. So these are antiretroviral drugs. Retrovir, Vitex, or Invarise. These are just some of the brands of antiretroviral drugs. Okay, so how do we prevent contracting HIV? So you have to know your A, B, C, D, and E. A is for abstinence. Abstinence meaning no sex or unprotected sex. B is be faithful to your partner. You have to be mutually faithful to your partner. You have to make sure that you are faithful to your partner and your partner is also faithful to you. So mutually faithful. C is correct and consistent condom use. So you have to know how to use condoms properly and you have to consistently use them. Okay, whenever you have sexual intercourse. D is for don't use or don't share needles. Of course, because HIV can be transmitted through needle pricks. And lastly is education and early detection. That is why we are here in Team Dugong Bughaw because we want to educate people students and the youth and everybody around us about HIV and AIDS. So that is one of the ABCDEs of prevention, education and early detection. Okay, so always remember that the risk to HIV infection depends on the behavior, not the identity of the person. So no matter who you are, you can get infected. So we have to know the science to stop the stigma. Okay, so we have already discussed the mechanics or the science behind HIV and AIDS and its prevention. Now, we are going to talk about stigma and discrimination among PLHIVs and surrounding the topic of HIV and AIDS. So, what is stigma? Stigma is an unfavorable attitudes and beliefs directed towards someone or something, while discrimination is the treatment of individuals based on their membership in a group. Now, why is HIV and AIDS highly stigmatized? Well, first and foremost, these are the primary reasons for stigma against PLHIVs and against HIV and AIDS. So people think that HIV is a life-threatening illness. There is no cure to it, or there is no treatment to it. Anyone with HIV or AIDS is doomed to die early. So that's one of the reasons for stigmatizing HIV and AIDS. Next is it is stigmatized because HIV and AIDS is highly contagious. Next is people have strong views about sexual behavior. So here in the Philippines, we are predominantly Catholic Christian country. So talking about sexual behaviors and sexual activities is kind of a taboo topic for some. So people have strong views about it, and since HIV and AIDS is highly associated with sex, so this is one of the reasons for stigma. Next is courtesy stigma. Okay, so stigma is more intense when HIV and AIDS is seen as untreatable. So if people think that HIV and AIDS is not treatable, that it is more stigmatized. So people think of it as it is a life-threatening disease, nobody gets out of it alive, stuff like that. People also believe that the virus transmission was as easy as first, sitting across each other, or sitting together, food preparation or eating food, or just breathing the air, or sleeping together or sleeping in a cramped place. So basically, what people believe then about HIV and AIDS transmission is actually not true. Well, these things are in fact true regarding other diseases such as COVID-19, but not about HIV and AIDS. Now, we need to know the science and stop the stigma. So we have to meet the needs for HIV and AIDS information to be able to stop the stigma. We also need to have training in healthcare for PLHIV, and we have to have acceptance and support to our PLHIVs. And we should also increase the access to HIV prevention, treatment, and care. So these are just some of the ways we can stop the stigma against HIV and AIDS. Now, we actually have human rights. So one of these human rights is freedom from discrimination as a fundamental human right. So nobody or no one in the community should be discriminated. That is a basic human right. Discrimination against persons living with HIV or those thought to be infected is a clear human rights violation, which is why we should stop discriminating them because it violates their human rights. They are humans after all. We are all humans after all. So nobody should be discriminated. So previously, we have the RA 8504, which is the Philippine AIDS Prevention and Control Act. This is an act promulgating policies and prescribing measures for the prevention and control of HIV and AIDS in the Philippines, which institutes a nationwide HIV and AIDS information and educational program and establishing a comprehensive HIV and AIDS monitoring program. This also strengthens the Philippine National AIDS Council and for other purposes. So this is the previous law about HIV and AIDS, which is the RA 8504. However, um, okay, so these are the main points of our 8504. So we have to have public awareness about HIV and AIDS, correct public awareness and correct public information through comprehensive nationwide educational and information campaign. So hindi pwedeng fake news. We also need to have authentic and a factual education and campaign for HIV and AIDS. Now, also, we need HIV 8, RA 8504 calls for the full protection of the human rights and civil liberties of every person suspected or known to be infected with HIV and AIDS. So PLHIVs are protected through RA 8504. Next is safety and universal precautions in practices and procedures that carry risk of HIV transmission. So whenever we do testing, there should always be safety and universal precautions so that it will not be transmitted further to other people. Okay, positively address and seek to eradicate conditions that aggravate the spread of HIV infection. So we need to call out or to eradicate the conditions that would increase the chances of spreading HIV infection. So we need RA 8504 mandates this, that we have to have precautions and preventions. Next would be participation of infected individuals in propagating vital information and educational messages about HIV and AIDS. So RA 8504 actually encourages PLHIVs to talk about their status, to make people more aware of their situations and the science and the truth behind HIV and AIDS. Next, it also includes confidentiality. So confidentiality in testing with counseling before and after testing. So you have to know that HIV testing is purely confidential and counseling is done before and after testing. It also includes testing. RA 8504 also includes testing, which should be adequate and affordable. So with RA 8504, there are many testing hubs or testing centers that offer HIV testing free already. So not only affordable, but should be adequate, accurate, and adequate. Next, it also includes penalties for breaching of confidentiality. So, for example, if someone you trusted or someone leaked or revealed your HIV status to other people, it could also be penalized. Okay, so because RA 8504 protects the confidentiality of PLHIVs or suspected PLHIVs. Now, discrimination against PLHIV is illegal. So employers cannot discriminate, fire, or schools cannot deny applications, and hospitals must not refuse treatment. So if someone discriminates another person just because of their HIV status, this could be penalized because it is illegal. Now, we also have recently, we already have the RA 11166 or the Philippine HIV and AIDS Policy Act of 2018. So this was signed by our current president, and this act repeals the RA 8504 and updates on the current trends and knowledge about HIV and AIDS. So these are just some of the updates of RA 11166. So the main body in charge of HIV and AIDS related program is the PNAC, or the Philippine National AIDS Council, is reconstituted to apply the 6-year medium-term plan to address the growing cases in the country. So the ones in charge about HIV and AIDS related programs is already the PNAC. Now, The Department of Health or the DOH is also ordered to establish a program to provide free and accessible treatment hubs or public or private hospitals for all PLHIV. So DOH is mandated to give accessible treatment and free treatment to PLHIVs in public or private hospitals. So treatment is free, testing is free. That's all thanks to RA 11166. Now, one major update is the consent for HIV testing. So before, in RA 8504, you have to be at least 18 years old to have to be able to freely give yourself for testing. And anyone under 18 years old needs their parents' consent for HIV testing. Now, with RA 11166, the new law allows minors who are 15 to 17 years old to be tested without the consent of their parents. So this may be due to the fact that a number of cases already includes 15 to 17-year-old kids or teenagers or minors. So they no longer need consent for HIV testing from their parents. So any person below 15 who is pregnant, married, or in high-risk behavior should be considered a mature minor and be allowed to give their own consent for HIV testing. Okay. So that is all for HIV and AIDS. So I hope that you were able to get many learnings about our topic. And if ever you feel the need to get tested, just contact any of our members in Team Dugong Bughaw because we do community-based testing. It's purely confidential, it's free and accessible and affordable. So I just would like to tell you that I hope you will become one of our esteemed partners or volunteers in HIV and AIDS awareness programs. And I hope that you all keep safe and stay healthy. And good luck for all your endeavors. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ate Karra, for imparting to us your knowledge on the HIV mechanics, including its prevention, stigma, and discrimination, and also for being with us this day.
Now, I think we're quite loaded with lots of information from our speaker, so might as well proceed to our open forum. While the speaker was introducing her topic, our secretariat team have listed 3 questions that our audience have been meaning to ask.
Here is the first question for Ate Karra. What are the common symptoms of HIV and AIDS? How long does it take to have noticeable symptoms?
Okay, so thank you for that question. Well, in all honesty, there are no definite symptoms for HIV and AIDS, unlike other diseases such as dengue. For example, if may dengue ka, you will have fevers, chills, low platelet counts, or whatever, tapos may mga rashes, or measles, di ba? May mga presenting symptoms ng measles. For HIV and AIDS, wala mga amuna ang mga symptoms. So, ang mga symptoms nga makuha sa mga PLHIV are that of the disease na nag-infect na sa ila tungod nubo na ila immune system. Because HIV attacks the immune system, mag-back down siya, and you are more prone to diseases such as TB or pneumonia. If magka-TB ka mo or pneumonia, amo na ang mga symptoms ka mag-manifest sa inyo. So, wala definite symptoms nga mahambal mo nga ang person nga na may HIV and AIDS. Or ang person nga na infected na siya, or PLHIV na siya. So, the only way you will know is to get tested. And with regards to how many years or how long would it take? So usually, depending on the immune system of the person. So it would take years pa if my immune system, but on some, mga months lang. However, may ginatawag nga early stages of HIV infection wherein magka-feel ka like flu-like symptoms. So this would usually occur around 2 to 4 weeks of infection. After infection. Pero after that, though wala naman other symptoms, unless you get tested, you will never know your status. So, amo na siya.
Have you heard that, students? Don't forget to take down notes, and for Manang Karra, here is your next question. Where can we get tested for HIV, and how often do we need to get tested?
Okay, so with regards to HIV testing, it can be done as early as 3 weeks after unprotected sexual intercourse. So if you want to get tested, you have to wait until 3 weeks para mag-get test ka mo. Pero within those 3 weeks, dapat hindi na ka mag-engage in sexual activity. Okay? Or any possible transmission. So, if you are sexually active, if one is sexually active, or may mga multiple partners ka mo, it is advisable to get tested every 3 months. So, you have to get regularly tested. Okay? So, that's very important because you might be negative now, pero after mo nag-engage na naman sa unprotected sex, base, makakontract ka sa virus. Okay, so regards to testing centers, we have a lot of testing centers here in Western Visayas. So these testing centers are in the Family Planning Organization of the Philippines, or the FPOP. Lapit na siya dito sa may UI. At the same time, we also have Iloilo Social Hygiene Clinic, diraman nga area. We have WVMC, or Western Visayas Medical Center, ang aton nga hospital there is sa Mandurriao. We have Iloilo Doctors Hospital, or the Medical City. So these are the testing centers nga nag-provide sa free testing centers, testing for HIV. Okay. At the same time, you can also get screened by a CBS motivator. A CBS motivator is a motivator or community-based screening motivator. So they are in charge of screening. So unlike sa testing, yung ginakuha ni Kamudugo, ang CBS usually dinaprick lang na ang inyong finger, a small amount of blood, tapos after 20 minutes, makuha mo na ang imong test results. So, in TDB, we have trained CBS motivators. So, all you have to do is to message any of the TDB members or message Team Dugong Bughaw sa amon FB page at Team Dugong Bughaw. So, we will gladly arrange a free screening for HIV sa anyone interested. Okay?
Now, moving on to the third and final question. What do you think is the impact of COVID-19 on people living with HIV?
Okay. So, since we are already into year 1, hopefully mag-last just year 1 ng ating COVID-19 pandemic experience. So, initially, sa first time gid nga naging lockdown and everything, ang major impact gid sa aton mga PLHI, sa COVID-19 sa aton PLHIVs are first and foremost access to their antiretroviral treatment, since diba ginahinder damo mga mga lockdowns and damo mga gina-prohibited nga mga activities. So, good lang sila makakuha sa ilang mga treatments. Pero fortunately, naka-develop naman ng other systems sa aton mga treatment hubs. Usually, gina-deliver na lang ang ARTs, or they ask the authorized people to get mga bulong nila to the PLHIVs. Pero it was really a struggle in the first months of the lockdown. Kay wala ta kabalo kung ano ubahon ta, because we were in the dark. So, and like ECQ pa and stuff. Another one would be their access to treatment. Since vulnerable population ng aton PLHIVs, they are more prone to sickness, kay immunocompromised sila. So, there is this difficulty in getting treated sa mga simple lang ang mga problems, such as, for example, nagka-flu sila or nagka-cold sila, or for example, nagsakit nila tiyan. So, there is a risk na magkadto sa hospitals or clinics because they are immunocompromised. Nobody knows, basta ang clinic ang kadtuan mo, may COVID patients or whatever. So, amo na siya, may difficulty in accessing treatments, and at the same time, accessing testing. Siyempre, meron ako na experience ang una nga may nagapangayo, bulig sa akon kung pwede siya magpa-test because the person is not feeling well, and then gusto niya magpa-test for HIV. So I called a certain testing center, and they said na they asked for the symptoms, and I told them about this and that, and they said na maybe it would be better first to get checked by a doctor since ang threats ng COVID is more imminent than the current situation. So fortunately, ang gingkadtuan niya nga hospital is that nag-offer man sila testing. So testing was really difficult that time. Pero subong medyo okay na. Hopefully, despite the rising cases sa COVID-19, there is sa may Iloilo. So amo na siya. And at the same time, we also might experience this nga there is increased stress due to isolation during these times. It's because we have limited leeway, we have limited free time. I mean, hindi siya limited free time, but like limited ang ating activities to do the things we used to love. So the same goes for them. Since they are isolated, we are all isolated. So there is this burden of stress to everyone. So those are the things na mas grabe yung impact sa aton mga PLHIs tungkol sa COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so thank you for those questions. I'm really glad na you are very curious about what's happening regarding HIV and AIDS and subong ang COVID-19 pandemic. So, as a last statement lang, I just would like you to get tested if you want, and at the same time, always practice the minimum health protocols like wear your mask, wash your hands, wear your face shields when going out, practice social distancing, and as much as possible, hindi alay sa gilagaw, please. Okay? So thank you very much.
Got that right, Ate Karra. That took a bit of our time, but thank you so much for your answers. I'm sure that the students learned so much during this alternative class with you. Kidding aside, maybe they'll join USA TDB soon.
Now we will proceed into the giving of the Certificate of Appreciation to our speaker. The certificate reads, "This Certificate of Appreciation is given to Karra Casañares for her invaluable insights and expertise shared with the participants during the alternative class of the University of San Agustin, Team Dugong Bughaw, entitled Project HIV, HIV Mechanism, Stigma, and Discrimination, given this 15th day of April in the year 2021. Signed, Jeremy Valiota, USA TDB President, Miriam Nica Grace Nunez, USA TDB Advisor, Jerimar Jeric M. Anata, RSO Coordinator, Eric C. de Vinagracia, SAWO Director, Reverend Father Wilson A. Capellan, OSA, Vice President for Augustinian Formation and Mission.
Okay, I think we already ran out of time for the open forum. Don't worry, Augustinians. If you have other inquiries or additional questions, kindly message us on our official Facebook page, USA-Team Dugong Bughaw.
Before we end our alternative class, let us hear the President of USA Team Dugong Bughaw, Mr. Jeremy Valiota, for his closing remarks.
Thank you. According to Alex Garner, an HIV activist, one of the best ways to fight stigma and empower HIV positive people is by speaking out openly and honestly about what we are dealing with and how is our experience with it. Again, a pleasant morning to each and everyone. I would like to call upon the attention of the Augustinian students that we should remember what Manang Karra has taught us unto this day, and we should make it our weapon to correct and impart knowledge that we have from those stereotypical assumptions of people towards the community of PLHIV or people living with HIV. I would like to make this closing remark short by thanking my USA Team Dugong Bughaw members for their effort in making this alternative class run smoothly, as you can see. To our advisors who have believed in our skills, towards the Team Dugong Bughaw main organization, especially to Kois Kingsley, Kois Addy, and Manang Karra for guiding us towards the end of this session. And lastly, to our RSO, especially to Sir Jeric and Nathan, thank you for your patience even though there was quite a misunderstanding here and there. And finally, this alternative class is coming to an end, and it has been both a pleasure and an honor to impart knowledge towards the Augustinian community. Thank you for tuning in USA Team Dugong Bughaw, Project High Five. Once again, I'm Jeremy Valiota, USA TDB's president. Once again, I'm Jeremy Valiota, USA TDB's president, and I hope to see you in our upcoming events. Don't forget to like our page, tune in, and hashtag Know the Science, Stop the Stigma.
And that ends our alternative class, students. Thank you, fellow Augustinians, for participating in our event today. We'd also like to acknowledge the RSO for giving us this opportunity to impart knowledge, to showcase our organization, and also our advocacy.
We hope that we served our purpose to educate everyone, especially our very own Augustinians. And again, guys, please do like and follow our official page, Team Dugong Bughaw USA, for more updates. Again, this is Chloe Kaduduan.
And this is Rainer Kawa.
Hashtag Know the Science.
Stop the Stigma.